This is a fun congregation this morning. Aren't you glad you got up and out of bed today? Wow, what a great day. So a couple of things. If you want to see what is probably the cutest baby ever, I just so happen to have pictures. If you aren't in on the inside joke, well, it's not a joke, it's the truth. Eric and I became first-time grandparents this week, and we have probably the universe's cutest grandchild. Now, I know some of you might argue with that, but facts are facts. Just saying. Madeline Rose was born last Saturday morning, and she is just precious. She was 8 pounds, 3 ounces, and she's in Indianapolis, and we got to spend a few days there with Mom and Dad. Now, Mary Rachel, her mom, ended up back in the hospital on Friday, 2 days ago, and is still there. She has some fluid buildup around her heart and lungs, and so she is back with some cardiomyopathy. And so if you would send up some extra prayers for her, we would appreciate it. She'll be there at least through tomorrow. And so our son is getting a good lesson on single parenting, and has the baby at home by himself, and is trying to care for his wife and the baby, and going between home and hospital. Also, I wanted to let you know that Anita Jones, who is a great member of our congregation and is home recovering from open heart surgery, her meal train has been well received this last week, but is almost empty for this coming week and going forward. So if you have the chance, either on the church app or by Googling meal train, not right now, but after church, and if you can take some food to her this week or coming up, I know she would greatly appreciate it. The only thing she needs is enough food for 2 people and low sodium. So really not a lot of requirements, and it would be tremendously appreciated if you would sign up for just 2 extra meals for Anita this week. If you need help getting on that, let us know. And again, if you want to see the cutest baby in the universe, I will have pictures in Fellowship Hall. Okay. So the sermon today is what I intended to preach last week, and it's called Good God, Why Evil? And it's commonly called in theology circles the question of theodicy. It's a question that many people ask when they're going through tough times. A husband who's suffering with early Alzheimer's. His memory is getting worse, his driver's license taken away, his dignity shattered. A daughter's ill health, parents watching as her health declines, as she grows weaker and withers away. A vibrant young man with a college degree but unable to find a job, depressed, losing hope, worrying about his future. A single mom with 3 children. One of them is autistic. Another has behavior problems. The mom works very long hours, and then she comes home to chaos. She ages prematurely. She struggles just to survive. A family choosing between staying at home where they have friends and a support system and a family, or moving to a new city, new schools, new doctors, a new church, the unknown, all because the company they work for is moving a job that they depend on. A gay couple who lost the security of family support, and now they're afraid to share the important aspects of their lives with coworkers and neighbors because they're afraid of prejudice and stigma. A three-generation family living together in a single-bedroom apartment, trying to make ends meet, not knowing where their next meal will come from. Good God, why? All of them are asking this question. Why? David Hume, a famous 18th century philosopher, framed the issue as succinctly as anyone. Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Or is God impotent? Is God able, but not willing? Then God is malevolent. Is God both able and willing? Well, then, where is evil? You don't have to be a philosopher to feel the tension here. All of us experience various kinds of evil. Whether it's great or small, we have it on a regular basis. Why would a good and all-powerful God allow this? Satisfying answers don't spring readily to mind. It's therefore no surprise that the presence of evil drives many people to conclude that such a God does not exist. The logic is straightforward. A God who is good and all-powerful cannot allow evil to exist. But evil does exist. Therefore, there is no good and all-powerful God. Now, thousands of books have been written about this topic, so a 12 to 15 minute sermon is very limited in its scope. I have many resources on this topic, however, and would be happy to loan them to you. But let's start by defining what evil is in this context. Sometimes we use the term loosely to describe something we don't like. Brussels sprouts, for example. That's not what we're talking about today. We also use the term to describe something bad that has happened, but maybe it's something we brought on ourselves, even unwittingly. If you exercise too much, for example, you can hurt your back. It feels like evil, and you might say, Lord, why me? Why my back at this point? But that's not what we're talking about either. We're talking about evil in the third sense. Not Brussels sprouts, not a hurt back, but suffering we can't control. It may be because of the choices of other people. A drunk driver who kills a friend in the passenger seat. Or people we love, both of them, and they divorce one another. It can be from natural events, an earthquake in a war-torn country, cancer found in someone we love. But when something bad happens, people gather around, you've seen this, I know, with cliches said to make someone feel better. Usually the cliche is made to make the person who said it feel better, by the way. One of the cliches that is said often is, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, right? This, by the way, is not in the Bible. And I don't think it's true. I've met several people who are dealing with more than they can handle. Another cliche that is made into, or another saying that's made into a cliche is from our biblical text for today. It's from Romans 8:28 through 32. All things work together for good. You've heard it then. And another one is, if God is for us, who can be? Oh, you've heard these. Okay. So our traditional word for today is from Romans 8:28 through 32. It's printed in your bulletin, And pay attention, because you've heard the cliches, but maybe you haven't heard the rest of the story. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to God's purpose. For those whom God foreknew, God also predestined to be conformed to the image of God's Son, in order that he might be firstborn within a large family. And those whom God predestined, he also called. And those whom God called, he also justified. And those whom God justified, he also glorified. Now, we would like to believe Paul when he says this. We'd like to say that God has reasons beyond our understanding for the suffering of the world, right? It's somehow comforting to think that suffering has some sort of greater purpose, and that things that are terrible have a reason. We'd like to believe that God is in charge. And though we don't always understand, there's somehow a greater plan for all the stuff that happens in our world. In his fabulous book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, how many have read it? Oh, excellent. Rabbi Kushner says there may be another approach. And I quote, "Maybe God does not cause our suffering. Maybe it happens for some reason other than the will of God." The psalmist writes, "I lift up mine eyes to the hills. From whence does my help come? My help comes from the Lord." Note that the psalmist does not say, "My pain comes from the Lord," or "My tragedy comes from the Lord." The psalmist says, "My help comes from the Lord." Now, if we take that Psalm 121 and shed it a light onto Romans 8, the text I read earlier, we realize that what the Apostle Paul is saying is that God brings us into a family. Look to your right. Seriously. Look to your left. And Jesus is the big brother in the family. Each person in this large family is valued and understood and praised. And when we are in a family like that, we can weather the storms of life surrounded by love. If God is for us, who is against us? It makes the painful, unbearable parts of life better, knowing that God is with us. And Paul says that there's this big safety net around us so that the family of God can hold us close when things are terrible. So, back to the problem of evil, or when bad things happen to good people. Does it prove that there is no good and all-powerful God? Some people say that suffering can be explained by free will. C.S. Lewis responds to the free will argument this way in his book, The Problem of Pain. And again, I'm quoting. "We can perhaps conceive of a world in which God corrected the results of this abuse of free will by his creatures at every moment, so that a wooden beam became soft as grass when it was used as a weapon, and the air refused to obey me if I attempted to set up in the sound waves that carry lies or insults. But such a world would be one in which wrong actions were impossible, and in which, therefore, freedom of will would be void. If the principle were carried out to its logical conclusion, evil thoughts would be impossible. for the cerebral matter, which we use in thinking, would refuse its task when we attempted to frame them. Some people say that suffering is necessary for spiritual growth and have even used our text today to add credence to their argument. All things work together for good. The problem with this argument is that many evils simply don't seem to promote that, such as the suffering of young children. What good comes from leukemia of a 2-year-old? Others enjoy lives of luxury where there is virtually nothing that challenges them to undergo moral growth. Kushner answers the problem with these words. He says, "I believe in God, but I recognize God's limitations. I no longer hold God responsible for illnesses and accidents and natural disasters because I realize I gain little and I lose so much when I blame God for those things." I remember seeing a bumper sticker that read, "My God is not dead. Sorry about yours." I guess my bumper sticker reads, "My God is not cruel. Sorry about yours." Don't you like that? My God didn't give you cancer. Sorry about yours. So the Apostle Paul might say, God creates this family with Jesus as the big brother and all of us as siblings. And this family is our safety net when life presents us with way too much. You know, it wasn't very many days ago when a member of UCC said to me that it's sometimes frustrating to have to deal with trivial things of the church. I think he might have been talking about bylaws, but I'm not sure. And then he said, but the compassion shown by members of the church is the real reason that people come here. It's in each other that people find God. Now, that lays a responsibility on our shoulders. It means we have to be here for each other. And it's a significant responsibility, but it is a sacred privilege. You know, breaking bread together and being the church in this community is holy work, but it is so very rewarding. The husband, he still has Alzheimer's, but he enjoys coming to church. His wife comes too, and she's surrounded by love and the nurture of God with a human face. The young daughter declines, she grows weaker, and she withers away. Her parents watch it, and they wait, and they pray. But the church brings meals, and when the daughter dies, the church gathers and celebrates her life, and they are there to listen to her parents' grief, and they tell her stories long after her breath is gone. That young, vibrant man, he's still looking for a job, but he finds just enough hope to get by when he worships with his friends on Sundays, and they pray for him. The single mom and her children find friends who live in similar worlds, and they take turns finding strength and holding on to one another. The gay couple finds acceptance and love among their friends in the church, and they learn again and again how to connect with people and find themselves loved by God. In the words of Eugene O'Neill, humans are broken. They live by mending. The grace of God is the glue. My friends, you are the glue. Amen.